Hello everyone. Actually, I was enjoying the way you are asking questions and others are helping you out, like no answering your questions and all. It's really awesome the way you are interacting. I believe your career is going to be very flourished as you go forward. By the way, my name is Satya Sekhar. I'm a lead developer advocate from the APAC Developer Relations team, Salesforce Developer Relations team. As part of my job, I motivate developers to build applications on the Salesforce platform, whether it might be using Apex or any conventional or any integration, complete customer 360 I take care of. While my interesting subjects are especially lighting web components, no doubt about it. And as part of my job, I also create videos, blogs, and probably you can find some of the videos on Salesforce Developers YouTube channel, where I also talked about the lighting web components and other parts of the platform. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about me. And with that said, what's the plan?
Yeah, we are nice to have you, Satya, over here. And we planned for 4 sessions, but due to trial series over there, so we are have only one session with you. So in future, we will be having a complete session with you. Yeah.
And it'll be a great pleasure doing that. Yeah, as Anand rightly said, like no, because of some busy schedule, I could not really take all the 4 sessions, but I'll definitely get you started with the lighting web components, and it's going to be good.
Yeah. Okay. You can start the session, Satya.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll quickly share my screen. I kept the today's session as open as possible so that it can be interactive. I'm also going to introduce you to the resources that we can use while learning the lighting web components. So let me quickly share my screen. Okay. So this session is all about building lighting web components. Many of might already know what are lighting web components, at least basic, at least the term, you would have heard that term. But even if you haven't heard the term, that's absolutely fine. We are going to see what are lighting web components today and how we can get started building the lighting web components. So my introduction is already done. As I said, I'm Satya Sekhar, lead developer advocate. If you want to reach me out, you can reach me on Twitter as Satya SFDC. Let me quickly put it in the chat, my Twitter handle. So you can use this handle to get connected to me. And if you have any questions, sooner or later, you can always post a direct message as well to me. I'll try to respond to your question as early as possible. With that said, this is one of the slides you might have seen many times by now, and this is called forward looking. And what this statement says is like, no, I might be talking about few of the features in today's session, which may not be generally available, in which case you'll have to make your purchase decisions based on what are currently available on the platform if you are making any purchase decisions. So what is the agenda for the today's session? It's pretty simple. It's just to get started with the lighting web components, nothing more than that. So we are going to see what are the different resources, how is it different from other kinds of user interface development technologies, or how it is similar to other kinds of user interface development technologies, how easy it is to learn, or what are some of the pitfalls that we'll have to commonly take care of while learning lighting web components and all. We'll cover all of these things in today's session. What do we already know? I understand by seeing your curriculum for this 100 days of learning. It's really awesome, Anand. Thanks. And thanks to Chennai User Group for really doing this. It's not that easy to do such a thing, like where people can learn so many things in 100 days. And thanks for bringing on all the speakers and helping other trailblazers. I know that's how the Salesforce ecosystem works, right? We take the help and we give out the help once we learn, once we know the concepts. So yeah, what I understand from the curriculum is you already know these concepts from the last session. You know HTML, you know JavaScript, you know CSS, right? HTML, as you know, is basically a static text file. Which can be used to format text, maybe just like your Word, you want to make it bold, italic, whatever you want to do. You can do some static operations on the text using the HTML. So those tags will be helpful. Like, you'll be using the markup language where you'll be using the tags to format the text in any static file in general. That's called HTML file. And these files are not dynamic. That's why we have something called as JavaScript, with which you can impose some dynamism to the HTML. Maybe you want to access data. Maybe you want to do some action based on users' interaction with the HTML page. For that, you'll be using the JavaScript. And of course, CSS, you have used it for styling your components. And these are the concepts that you already know. So what do you need to know in order to learn Lightning Web Components? So what are you going to learn? You're going to learn, again, the same thing. You're going to learn JavaScript. In fact, you already know JavaScript. So you're going to use that JavaScript to build the Lightning Web Components. Strictly speaking, if you want to build Lightning Web Components, don't mind if you don't understand the term Lightning Web Components at this point of time. We are going to talk a lot about it. But for now, think of Lightning Web Components as some kind of front-end JavaScript framework. That's all. A framework with which you can create the front end, with which you can create the user interfaces. So in order to create a Lightning Web Components, what's that you need to know? The JavaScript. And if you know JavaScript, you can start creating Lightning Web Components, even if you don't know anything else. And this is one single file that is needed to create a Lightning Web Component. That's it. With JavaScript, I can create a Lightning Web Component. Okay. But again, if you want to show something in the front end, some user interface you want to show, and some input you want to accept from the user, in that case, along with JavaScript, you'll also be using HTML. So JavaScript is used for all functionality that you want to implement within Lightning Web Component. And HTML you'll be using to show the user interface to the end user so that you can accept some input and also show some output on the browser screen. So these are the two common files which we use to build the Lightning Web Components. Again, these Lightning Web Components can be used on the Salesforce platform and also off the Salesforce platform. But if you want to use the Lightning Web Components on the Salesforce platform, you are going to use something called as, of course, CSS you can use for styling. You're going to use something called as XML. There is a XML file. You'll be using an XML file where you'll be defining the configurations. You might already know if you have done some Trailhead modules that Salesforce stores everything in the form of metadata. So you know how to organize the page layouts, how to store the data, how to retrieve the data, whatever. So all these things are stored in the form of metadata, using which you can interact with the Salesforce platform. That's how it is stored. So what we do here is we define some kind of metadata to tell the Salesforce platform that I'm creating a Lightning Web Component. Now this component has to be made available in, say, Lightning App Builder, or this component can be published, can be placed in a home screen, maybe in app page. So all such kind of things you can define in a special file called XML file. So other than what you already know, like HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, the only new thing you're seeing here is an XML file. And again, there is a tool called Lightning App Builder, using which you are going to organize these components into pages, right? When you do that, if you want to identify a component with a logo, then you can also define a logo for your component using an SVG file. So these are the 5 simple common files, which most of which you already know is what we are going to use in our Lightning Web Components development. Is it not simple? It should be. Let's see how simple it is. Let's go ahead. Again, because we are talking about the Lightning Web Components, I want to formally define what a Lightning Web Components is as well. Okay, if I have to find a a definition from the Salesforce documentation on what is Lightning Web Components, what the documentation says is it's a modern open source UI framework. Okay, it's basically a modern open source UI framework, nothing more than that, which is optimized for performance, and it is designed to boost developer productivity and based on web standards. This definition at this point of time may look a little complex, but don't worry, we are going to break it and we are going to understand the meaning of each part of this definition. As I said, it's an open source UI framework, means you can find the source code of how the Lightning Web Components is implemented on an open source repository. It is hosted on GitHub. Okay, and it is optimized for performance. So why Lightning Web Components came into existence, we are going to see the story in a short while. But yeah, Lightning Web Components was introduced in order to optimize the performance. When it optimizes the performance, obviously it is going to boost the developer productivity. And most important thing is it is based on web standards. What that means is whatever code your browser runs, basically maybe your Chrome browser, maybe your Safari browser, whatever browser. So whatever code your browser runs, your Lightning Web Component is based on that code. That's why the performance is so good when it comes to Lightning Web Components. Okay. Again, in this slide, I have put two compartments. One saying Lightning Web Components, the other also saying Lightning Web Components. So I want to avoid this confusion right in the beginning of the session itself. If you closely observe, can you see any difference between these two compartments? Like at least in the title, you can just let me know in the chat window. Yeah, I see a question. What is SVG stand for? Yes, SVG stands for Standard Vector Graphics. It's just a line graphics, like with which you can create a logo. Okay, one difference John Wick says is web and web. Very good. Font size, good. Capital W and capital C, awesome. Logo difference at the bottom. Oh, great. I love it. Yeah. So most of these things are correct components, capital C. Badge difference. Okay, 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 okay. So let's keep it simple. Capital, capital. I see a lot of capital, capital. Yeah, that's true. If you see here, the Lightning Web components, all these three letters are capitalized, while here I only capitalized the Lightning and I made small w, small c. So basically, when I say Lightning Web Components in all capitals, I'm talking about the framework, right? It's a JavaScript framework on which you can build the components, right? So the name of the, whenever I'm referring, like whenever you are referring to the documentation of Lightning Web Components, if you see this, all the words, letters capitalized, then that particular thing is referring to the framework as a whole. But when these two characters, like these two beginning characters of these words are small, they are referring to the actual component. Maybe you have created a email component. Okay, so you are referring to the component itself, not the framework. So this is one subtle difference you'll have to make a note of. Whenever we are seeing in the documentation something like this, it is referring to the Lightning Web Component itself. Okay, and yeah, what is this Lightning Web Components? As it says in this definition, it is a simple custom HTML element. That's it. You already know HTML elements, right? What are the HTML elements? Head, body, whatever it is, paragraph. These are the different tags that you have already used. These are the HTML elements. Okay, so those HTML elements which you have learned so far are called standard HTML elements. Okay, means these are the HTML elements that are predefined by the World Wide WWW consortium. Okay, those are the standard components, standard elements. See, I'm using the term components. Those elements can also be considered as components because they do some kind of other kind of functionality for you. So these are standard elements: head, body, HTML, whatsoever. These are all the standard elements. Now, what you can do with Lightning Web Components, you can create your own custom HTML elements. Now you can extend the HTML, right? You can create your own elements, and then you can embed those elements like any other HTML element in an HTML page. Okay, that's the goal. So Lightning Web Components are custom HTML elements. They are built using basic HTML and modern JavaScript. Now you can see that it's a combination. We are going to use HTML as well as JavaScript. So these elements are going to be really dynamic. So each element that you're going to create are going to have one or other kind of functionality. You're going to create these elements to create some kind of functionality there. So this is the subtle difference between Lightning Web Components as a framework and Lightning Web Components itself. Is that clear? Hopefully it is clear. So let me quickly see the chat. So the component is same like we drag and drop the components in builder, example, single related list. Exactly, Asham. It's something like that, where you drag and drop and then it has to work. So in order to make it happen, we are going to build those components. Let's see how we do that. Okay. Ankit, you want me to explain one more time? Sure, I'll definitely explain. So I'm going to explain it in detail as we in the further slides. But for now, before going forward, one bottom line I want to make is whenever you see Lightning Web Components with all capitalized, you are referring to the framework. Framework is where you have a set of tools and development environment and all with which you can build the components, the small components which you can embed, drag and drop into your page. Okay, those small components are referred to this Lightning Web Components, where I have written it in small case here. Okay, anyway, we are going to see that like as we keep doing, as we keep working on that, you'll understand it very clearly. And at that point of time, this looks trivial. At this point of time, it may look complex, but it's not complex. We are going to work on it. So, how do you build user interface on Salesforce platform? Can anyone tell me, like, what are the different options of how you can build user interface on Salesforce platform? Aura, great. Visual Force, awesome. Page layouts, Visual Force, Screen Flow, Lightning, Aura, VF, LWC, VF, great, great, great. You're all correct. I know. You're all learning. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Now let us see. So what are the options that we have here? As you said, page layout. Page layout is provided by Salesforce platform out of the box. So Salesforce, if you see, we say it as like no code platform, right? Most of the times, where you need not really code to build your very first prototype of the application. Okay, as you build complex operations, probably you will build some custom element, but otherwise, out of the box, you can deliver the application even without writing a single line of code. Then how does we get the user interface? That's where the page layout is provided out of the box by Salesforce platform. You need not really create a front end. Front end is already available there, and you can start using it. You can drag and drop your fields, and you can you can arrange your fields in your page layout, and it is going to show in the forms, maybe input form or display form. So this is best way of getting started. But if you want to create a user interface, a custom user interface by yourself, okay, you can obviously customize page layouts, but if you want to create your own user interface, custom user interface, in that case, you can use these are the three options that are currently available on Salesforce platform. One is Visual Force, the other one is Aura, and the third one is LWC. Okay, what is Visual Force? Why we have so many options? Do we really need so many options to build user interface? Absolutely no. But why then we have these four options? So these options evolved over a period of time. If you see page layout, as I said, comes out of the box. But if you want to create your custom user interface, Visual Force is the first one, which was introduced in 2007, if I'm not wrong. So at that point of time, there was nothing so many JavaScript frameworks and all. So the only thing we could do is how to make HTML dynamic. So that's when they have devised a new markup language, which is based on HTML and XML, where we can create some elements, some components. Then also we used to call them as components, and embed those components in HTML page. So that is called as Visual Force. Nowadays, if you are building the latest applications, you probably don't use Visual Force to build the applications. Rather, you use the Lightning Web Components because that is the modern user interface framework. Okay, but again, if you are working in any of the legacy projects, like if the Visual Force is so good that people don't want to really get rid of Visual Force, they still want to use Visual Force because it has a very good performance. Okay, so there are some projects still in existence, which are legacy projects, I would say, are based on Visual Force. So knowing Visual Force is definitely going to be helpful if you are working on any of the older projects. But most of the projects, in fact, are being migrated to Lightning Web Components, even if it is built on Visual Force or Aura. Okay, when it comes to Aura and LWC, both are Lightning experience frameworks. Okay, both components look similar. You cannot probably distinguish these two components when you get into Lightning App Builder and drag and drop those components. You don't know whether it's built using Aura or LWC. But then why LWC? Why not Aura? Why they have introduced LWC? For that, let's see a little bit of history of how the web development has changed over a period of time. If you see past somewhere like sometime between before 2015, I would say, okay, and 2015 onwards, last 7 years, the web development has changed drastically. The way we implement the things has changed drastically. Okay, this is called as the web stack. Okay, where how the functionality, if you see in the browser, how the functionalities are implemented in the browser, how the functionality is implemented by a developer. If you see on the left side, if you see the stack, you can see a blue compartment at the bottom and a green compartment at the top. Okay, so this blue compartment is the set of functionality that is implemented within the browser, that is available out of the box. Okay, 1 second, I can move this. Yeah, that is implemented out of the box. So if you see, if you say take for instance Google Chrome, so whatever is written here is implemented within the Google Chrome itself. Okay, then what is this green compartment? At that point of time, if you go back and see, you have so many JavaScript frameworks, around 2015, so many JavaScript frameworks evolved, like say React.js, Vue.js, AngularJS, Node.js, and whatnot. So many JavaScript frameworks, and most of these frameworks does the same thing in a different way. Why? Because the standards were very low. So whatever is implemented in the browser, this box is very small. And whatever functionalities that are to be implemented by the JavaScript framework is really heavy. So every JavaScript framework can implement its own kind of language extensions, its own way of implementing modules, its own way of optimizing the rendering mechanism, its own way of building the component model and all. These are the different things that can be built in their own way in the JavaScript. But over a period of time, somewhere by 2019, the web standards have evolved in such a way that most of these things, what earlier the JavaScript framework used to do, are now being done by the browser itself. So you need not really break your head on implementing so many things. You only implement what is required for your business logic. Build your UI components, build some data services if you want to access data from your platform, and any kind of specialized services. Only these three things, if you can implement, that's good. Rest of the things are based on the browser technology. Again, to do this, to get to this level, you need to obey all the standards, web standards. Okay, so basically HTML standards are defined by www. Okay, similarly, these JavaScript standards are defined by this ICMA script, like we call it as ICMA script standards. Okay, so these are the standards organizations in which actually Salesforce is a partner of these organizations. So Salesforce is involved in decisions made by these organizations while making the standardization. That's why the Lightning Web Component is one of the early frameworks that have implemented over the web standards. So that made our life easy. That's the reason we are going to use the basic HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to build the components. Again, if you go back, Aura was created somewhere at this point of time. Aura was created then, and Lightning Web Components is created now. Okay, at this point of time, Aura was created, which means we need to handle all of these things. That's why if you go back and see, as you go forward, probably you'll be learning Aura framework as well in your coming sessions. Because some of the projects, as I said, like legacy projects, still use Aura framework. So it's always good to learn Aura framework in order to maintain those projects until they are moved to the Lightning Web Components. So this Aura framework, it used to have a bundle of files, a bundle of 8-9 files basically, with which you define the component. But again, when it comes to Lightning Web Components, as I said earlier, one JavaScript file is enough if you just want to build a utility. But if you want to build a user interface as well, you are going to use HTML and JavaScript. We are going to see that in action in a short while. Don't worry. So that's why we want to go and implement our new modern user interface using the modern framework that is Lightning Web Components. So, with that said, now let's get into real things and let's see how exactly a lightning experience page would look like. If you remember, if you remember your Salesforce platform or if Salesforce org, um, you would have seen the pages something like this, right? These are the different components. Actually, the page, you take any page, the page is not built as a whole, which we used to do when we used to do create visual force in general. Though later we also started creating components, but originally it used to have a single page, complete page, and the complete page was compiled, so on and so forth. But this lightning experience is more optimized. Most of the things, instead of doing something on the server side, we do it on the in the browser itself, client side itself. Okay, all this processing happens in the client side itself. And this page, if you take any page, each page is made up of some small components. Uh, like here, if you see, we have tabs, okay, and a image component, a map component, whatever. So these are all the small components which we put together in order to build a page. Okay, before I go forward, let me see some questions if you have any. And yeah, let me also tell you that if you have any questions, keep posting the questions here in the chat window. I will keep answering your questions at the relevant times, at relevant breaks. Okay, good. So I have one question here. To get started with LWC, do we need to know Aura? Absolutely no. You can get started with LWC directly, even if you don't know anything about Aura framework. Okay, so it's not at all a prerequisite. So why you are learning Aura? If you are working, if you are going to work on any of the legacy projects, like you need to know and you need to understand how that was implemented, right? So that's the reason you are going to learn Aura. Prior to is the same question. I think I answered. So just the development of markup language comes to Salesforce also create new things. See, uh, I probably got this question right or wrong. I don't know, but what I understand from this question is, um, so just the development of markup language come. So Salesforce also create new things. Yes, with the markup language, you can obviously create new things. You are extending the platform, right? You are extending the markup language. So when it comes to HTML, you have some standard elements. So these standard elements provide some kind of standard functionality. Now you want to create your own functionality, like now more functionality. For that, you are extending, you are creating your own custom elements. So you are extending the markup language. Here, there are many points which are very important. One is you are extending it, you are creating your custom elements. Why is that possible? That is because this framework is based on web standards. And the web, and one more thing is like, no, because it is based on web standards, the performance of whatever you're going to create is going to be really good. You need not really worry about optimizing the performance too much. Okay, so you only need to concentrate on how to build the business logic. Yes, there are subtle points, there are few concepts to take consider to optimize the performance. That is an advanced level where you can, like, once you get started, start working, you'll get to know and you learn a lot of optimization things. But otherwise, you need not really worry about optimization. Just worry about your business logic. Okay, it's also the same question. Uh, Is all three need to learn for beginners? No, Babu. It's up to you. Again, I would say, like, no. Uh, if you start learning everything, it will be overwhelming. Don't try to learn too much. So you understand the concepts. You understand the basics. Once you understand the basics, you can literally learn anything. So what I would say, suggest is you learn the basics, okay, and be ready to do a just-in-time learning. Now you got a requirement, you should be able to do that. If you open some documentation, see some examples, you should be able to do that. Today, I'm going to enable you. I'll show you how you can, like, get started and how you can take all these resources as your what we call weapons to build your knowledge. Okay, let's see how we are going to do that. Yeah, in previous slide, the green color things are handling by server. No, the green color things are handled by the browser. So actually, I'm not. These green color things are handled by the JavaScript framework, not the server. Again, if you see any application that's running on internet is based on client server technology. Okay, So your Salesforce platform is on server, let us say on the cloud. Your browser, whatever you're using, or your mobile phone, that is the client. Okay, so some software will be running on your client, and some software will be running on your server. So when you run an application, this client sends a request to the server and it sends a response. Okay, so your user interface, where do you see your user interface? On the browser. When you build a user interface, so what happened is, over a period of time, this client has become so powerful that instead of putting the complete load on the server for processing, you can pre-process few of the things on the client side, and then let server do rest of the processing. So to do the client side processing, you're going to implement few of the things in front-end frameworks like JavaScript is what is implemented in this green color. So I'm not going to talk anything about, or maybe some things which are relevant at some point of time, but I'm not going to talk anything about the server today. I'm going to talk only about the client, what you're going to do on the front end, what you're going to do on the browser. That's it. It's easy to learn LWC than Aura. Obviously, yes, Sankita. LWC is much easier than Aura, I would say, because LWC is based on HTML and JavaScript and CSS. There is nothing complex about the framework. It's all about whatever things you already know. Okay, but again, don't try to learn too many things at a time. You're going to learn a piecemeal, I would say, like a bite-sized content. So learn few things on a daily basis, and it's going to be very, very easy, I would say. I understand JavaScript, HTML, not CSS. Don't worry, Deepak. CSS even today, when I program, right, what I generally do is I see someone's implementation of CSS, I copy paste it, tweak it, and then make it work and make my interface look like his interface. Okay, it's going to be that way. Understand, like, no, try to learn some basics of CSS, like basic what is style, how you are going to create the classes, and how you are going to use those classes. Anyway, that you are going to do while you are learning the Lighting Web Components. Okay, very good question, John. We'll use SLDS for styling our components for the most part. Yes. In fact, this is an answer to your question, Deepak. I would say, like most of the times, we'll be using SLDS. Again, what is SLDS? It's called Salesforce Lighting Design. It's a lighting design system. So basically, what we have done is we have made CSS easy for you. Okay, we have made CSS easy for you. We have created a separate framework for you. Okay, where we have created commands and CSS classes, and then you can use that as an attribute, as a property here, and you can style it automatically just to look like your lighting experience. If you open any of the Salesforce pages, all pages look similar, right? They have some kind of flavor there. So to get that kind of flavor, you are going to use SLDS. So we are going to you are going to use those SLDS while you are going to build your lighting web components, and I'll show you how to use that SLDS as well. Don't worry. Okay, with that, let's go ahead a bit. Yeah, thanks for answering that question, Anand. Okay, fine. Now, so here, like, if I go back, so I said, like, your lighting page, whatever page you take, it's all built on basis. It's all built with some small components called lighting web components or Aura components, whatsoever. They're all built on components. So to really understand that in detail, let's see what is a component-based architecture. Now you see a page here, right? Now let's see how this page is implemented using the component-based architecture. And as I said, I'm going to talk about the application layer, the view layer. I'm not going to talk about much about the your business logic layer or your database layer. If you see this application layer, on this application layer, you're going to have the lightning page, right? So how this page is built, as I said, this page is built using the components. Now, if you see, this looks like a lighting page. So there are different components on this page. Here we have a component, here we have a component and all. And then these components are called as experience components. So why we call it as experience components? Basically, any user interface that you develop or is developed in order to provide a very good user experience. So what we say, if you go to hotel, okay, If the look and feel of the hotel is good and it is aesthetic, and if they are serving good food, so like no, so how they serve the food, all this matters to you. This is the experience that you're getting from the hotel. Similarly, any user of your application should get a good experience. He should easily know where to enter the data, where to input, and where he can see the output and all. So you're going to provide some kind of experience there, maybe through input fields or output fields, whatsoever. So you're going to build a component, okay, which provides some kind of functionality, a, a fully functional. For instance, if I want to create a login form, that is a functionality. Login form will have some two input fields, okay, and maybe one or two buttons there to log in into the system, right? So that is an experience component. So all these pages are made up of experience components, and these experience components are built using base components. Now, again, if you see the login form example, the input field is a base component. The second input field is a base component. You have a button, it's a base component. So you're going to combine these base components in order to build the experience components. And if you combine all these experience components together, it's going to be a page. Now, let's see some of the examples of these experience components or base components. If you see these icons, whatever you're seeing is a base component. Buttons is a base component. Badges is a base component. Avatars, icons, spinners, inputs, whatever you're using, the fundamental components that you're using in your page, in your form, is an base component. And then what are experience components? Some of the examples, say for instance, you want to create a news article, right? It has many base components, like it has a base component to embed the image, it has base component to embed a paragraph, so on and so forth. Similarly, you can create reports, related lists that you're seeing in your lighting experience, your path, chat feed, all of these things are the experience components. Again, the administrator can, in fact, get all these experience components, and provided a tool, he can combine these experience components to build the pages. Now, you need not really build the pages by yourself. Administrator has the complete flexibility of building the pages once you create the experience components. So how are you going to create the experience components today? We are going to use the Lighting Web Components framework. Again, there are a lot of base components out there in the market. So this slide is a bit older, which says 85 plus component. I think there should be near 100 components at the moment, or even more. So there are a lot of base components available, and there are also a lot of experience component available out of the box. As you know, anything that is provided by the Salesforce platform out of the box, we call them as standard things, right? Like standard objects, standard fields, and all. And whatever you build by yourself, they are the custom things like custom fields, custom objects, and all. Similarly, you also have some experience components which are pre-built for you. Just consider them like a standard components. You can use those standard components to build your applications. For instance, path is already there. Related list is already there. You need not rebuild the components. And see, you can incrementally build a component. Maybe you have built a component for some functionality. Then in future, your organization wants a bigger functionality, which also has that functionality. You can reuse your component. So that is the sole purpose of using the component-based architecture. And we'll see how to build those components and how to reuse those components today. So what is the developer tooling that is needed in order to build the Lighting Web Components? As of today, I would say you need a Salesforce CLI. This is a little exception. The way we build the applications on Salesforce platform, generally we need not install any software. That's what we say when we work on the Salesforce platform. We need not install any software. You're going to work on the cloud, even if you have a mobile, probably you can manage with your mobile. You can also work with your mobile on Salesforce Cloud. But Lighting Web Components is a little exception where you're going to install a little bit of software on your system at the moment. But sooner or later, these are going to go away. Maybe you are going to see a tool that is available on the web. You need not install anything on their system. Okay, so Salesforce CLI is one thing you need to install. And what does Salesforce CLI do? It provides some functionalities like, if you want to create the web components, maybe you want to sync your component changes on your local development environment with your Salesforce org, your production org, or wherever you are deploying your org. So if you want to see all of those changes, the Salesforce CLI provides some kind of command line interface with which you can interact with your Salesforce org. Okay, so I'll also show you how to use the Salesforce CLI as we go forward today, and some examples of the commands that you can use. And in general, if you take any platform, not only Salesforce, most of the platforms, they have a CLI version, a command line interface version. Why? Because this command line interface are kind of text commands. With basic commands, you can interact with the system. Maybe you want to get the data, you have a command for that. You send a command, you probably get the data from there, your org. So whatever you can do from the user interface, most of the things can be done using the command line interface. In fact, the other way around, most of the user interface operations you do are built based on some kind of command line tools that are already implemented. Anyway, you need not really worry about that. For now, understand that Salesforce CLI is there, using which you can run some commands. Okay, probably we may not be using Salesforce CLI much as we develop the components, but it's good to know that there's a CLI. In fact, we are going to run the commands which are already defined in CLI. The other thing that you need to install in order to get started writing web components is VS Code. Did I say need to install? Then I am wrong. It's up to you. You can install VS Code. It's not mandatory. You can use any of your text editors to build the Lightning Web Components. As I said earlier, Lightning Web Components is basic HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, right? So if you can build HTML using a general text editor, why not Lightning Web Components? Of course you can. Of course you can. But why VS Code? Because VS Code, Salesforce always works in a way to make the developer's life easy, to make the things easy for the developer. So Salesforce has created a Salesforce extension. Okay, a Salesforce extension pack which can run on VS Code, where it provides all the tools that are necessary for you, which makes the things easy while you build the applications. We are going to see those extensions in a short while. But again, so what are the other things that you get out of the box from VS Code? A project explorer. Just like if you are from some other background, like say Java or some other technology, if you have used the tools like Eclipse or any such kind of tool, you would have seen Project Explorer, where you can see all your project files advanced in your development environment itself. Okay, so VS Code provides such kind of experience for you. It's going to make your managing your project very easy. Okay, and it has. I think Anand, you might have to mute or someone. Okay, cool. Yeah, so there is an integrated debugger as well. And it has Git integration when you work with your repositories. If you want to save your project files into repository, you have a Git integration. Don't worry, you're going to learn about all of these things as you go forward. But yeah, these are the different features that comes out of the box. It's not code completion. It is actual code completion. There's a spelling mistake. Don't worry. With this combination of Salesforce CLI plus VS Code, you're going to have a best developer experience. Take my word. You're going to have a easy to build kind of experience with which you're going to build the applications. With that said, I have made a lot of talking. Let's build Lightning Web Components. Let's see how we can build the Lightning Web Components. But before that, let me see if I have some questions here. Okay. Is Lightning Web Component can be used in Salesforce Classic as well? It's a very good question. Neha, thanks for asking that question. You can, in fact, embed a Lightning Web Component, use Lightning Web Components with your Visualforce as well as the Aura components. And I would, this is a very early stage on talking about how to use that. But yeah, to answer your question, you can. What are the other text editors which can be used in place of VS Code. Okay. So as I said, you can literally use any text editor. Okay, you can use a Salesforce CLI to run the commands for to create the components and all. But literally, you can use any text editor. But VS Code is preferred, and we encourage you to use VS Code because it has Salesforce extension pack, which has a complete set of tools that are going to make your life easy. What is Salesforce DX means, Narendra? Again, this is a good question. I would say I'm just saying Salesforce DX, Salesforce DX, Salesforce DX, and we are going to use that. But what is Salesforce DX in first place? This DX stands for Developer Experience. So again, to tell what is Salesforce DX, if you go to the good old days like 2015, 2017, before 2017, the tooling of the Salesforce was we had developer console, but the tooling of the Salesforce was not so great, and we took input from various professionals on how we can make it big and how we can make it good for the developers so that they can easily develop the application on the platform. That's when the Salesforce developer experience evolved, and Salesforce developer experience is basically a set of tools for you to work with the Salesforce platform. Say maybe there are tools to work with Apex, there are tools to work with Visualforce, there are tools to work with various things of the Salesforce platform. All these tools together, combined together, we call it as Salesforce developer experience. And you can you can access the Salesforce developer experience using the Salesforce CLI that we are going to see with practically by working on it. Did I answer your question, Narendra? Hopefully. If not, you can just keep posting your question. If you feel like your question is not answered, you can keep posting the question. I'll answer your questions. So this session is all about learning. So I want to spend as much time as you want for the questions while also teaching the Lightning Web Components. You're going to learn more about Lightning Web Components in future sessions. So this is just getting started. So don't worry. You keep posting your questions. One question from Swami Ravichandra, explain about Git. Okay. What is Git? Basically, in Salesforce, you would have learned that your source of truth is generally your production org, right? You have a production org, then you have sandboxes. You develop your applications on sandboxes. Okay. Maybe you share the sandboxes with each other. And then you keep building the applications there. Once your application is stable, then you deploy your application into the production. Okay. So what happens if something goes wrong somewhere in the production? How can you save your code? So for that, what you can do is, so while you work with the production orgs and other development environments, it's always good to have a storage of your code somewhere so that it will not be disturbed. If some other person comes and for instance, let me tell you an example. If you share a sandbox with one more developer, okay, you have written a very good utility today, and you happily went home, enjoyed your night. You are so happy that you have done your you have created a very nice utility today, and sometime later tomorrow, some other developer on that sandbox overwrites your code with a hello world program. What happens? You'll get disappointed, right? What if you can save this code somewhere so that even if someone disturbs, someone spoils it, you can again get back the code. So for that, you can use something called as a repository, a version control system. We call it as version control system in general. Okay, where you create a repository. Repository is like a place where you can store your programs. And for that, there are different kinds of vendors, different kinds of open source vendors, which provide that facility for you. One such open source vendor is Git. So you can use Git as a framework, as a tool for storing your repository, for storing your code. So instead of just relying only on your production org as a source of truth, now you are going to rely on this repository as a source of truth. So whenever you want, you can check out your code from this Git repository. You can make the changes and again save it there. And if you want to deploy it on production, you move it to production. If you want to deploy it on some other sandbox for testing, you can move it to sandbox and then uh, do the testing. Probably this deserves a whole session. In fact, I can talk a lot about it for a whole day. Maybe sometime later we'll see if we can dedicate some time for the GitHub repository as well. But yeah, this is how the Git works. So Sudarshan, you say Sublime text editor, Notepad, Notepad++. Obviously, yes, yes, yes. You can use these text editors, but again, I would say once you start using Visual Studio Code, even for normal things also, I assure you are going to use the Visual Studio Code itself. You're going to forget your Sublime text editor. You're going to forget your Notepad, Notepad++. Once you start using Visual Studio Code. So also use Intelli IDE for LWC. As I said, anything which supports a text editor can be used, but use Visual Studio Code because it's easy to use and we have the tools already available there. How Git is related to Salesforce? Right. In Salesforce, you write Apex programs. In Salesforce, you write Lightning Web Components. What you can do is you can store all these programs in Git. Okay. And if you erase everything from your system, no worries. You again can get back it from the Git repository and start working on that. So that is Git. What is Git? Is a check-in, checkout. Okay, what is check-in, checkout? So basically, when you write your programs, right? So if you are storing it in the GitHub repository, you are saving it there, so that in future you can refer. So that saving process is called as check-in. And whenever you want to work on your code, you can check out the specific code from the GitHub repository and use it. I'll also show you an example why to make the things complex. I'll show you an example on how we are going to check out the code from the GitHub repository today itself. Don't worry. Pranav, yeah, very good. Thanks, Pranav, for answering this question. He says, he answered Shiro's question like, no, why to use the VS Code? I love your answer. Versioning code, Git is to maintain version of the code. Exactly, Amar. So as you keep tweaking the changes, every change can be a version. Okay, so you can go back to any of the older versions if you feel like no, you have already developed some kind of you have already made some kind of changes, and then you think, oh no, I don't want to use these changes. I want to go back to older version. So you need not really worry about like no, keep on undoing things. Rather, you can get that older version from the GitHub repository directly and start working on it. SFDX extension for create classes and objects in VS Code. We are going to see that, Suresh, in short while. I got in Salesforce ecosystem as a release manager. How to move in my career? Yeah, though this question is not related to today's topic, I love to answer this question. So you are a release manager. You are a delivery manager, which is good. So Salesforce is no different from any other software industry. So here also we have the roles of like no whatever kind release manager and all. But again, knowing the platform and doing the things will be much easy. That's the reason I would say like learn the Salesforce platform a little bit, and you can easily move in the career. Okay. Someone's microphone is unmuted. Okay. Does web version of VS Code works in same way as downloaded application? Also, it is required to install Java Kit and extension Sierra and web version and to perform all config. Neha, is a very good question. I would say you better reserve this question for 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is, until the web version is available. But yeah, when we say web version, obviously you need not really bother about all of those things. Okay.
What are they mean?
It's going to be available to you out of the box. Okay. You can just launch the program, start working on it once it is ready, whatsoever. Do we have a Salesforce framework where we have some basic code? We can use it whenever it is required. Yes, Swami Ravichandra. That's exactly what we are going to see today. That's exactly what I'm going to show you today. Okay. So some basic code which you want to use, and all. Okay. So this is a lot of questions. In fact, I answered all the questions, and now we'll get Abby as Abby says, like, let's continue with our agenda lesson from now on. Okay, so let's build LWC. How do you build LWC? So for that, I'm going to show you some of the tools. In fact, I haven't created any slide for that. So whatever answers I've been giving so far, okay, we are going to see all of those answers in the form of implementation now. I can hear some noise or sound. If any of the microphones are unmuted, please mute it. Okay. So yeah, just like any of you new developers, I'll start from the browser itself. Okay, google.com. This is where we start, right? So one of the resources I want you to be always bookmark is just type Lightning Web Components. Okay, and here you can see introducing Lightning Web Components for Salesforce developers. This is the complete documentation for Lightning Web Components. So this is the total developer guide. It's a real big guide. You need not read every line of it, but when you start working on the components, wherever you have a question, wherever you have a doubt, wherever you want to learn the concept, go back and refer to the Lightning Web Components developer guide here. This is one important resource I want you to bookmark. The other important resource is Trailhead. Okay. Yeah. Trailhead, you can use this trail. This is one of my favorite trails, Build Lightning Web Components, which has all the modules, different modules, which deal with the Lightning Web Components. So Trailhead is definitely my favorite learning platform. That's because each of these modules, when you see, these modules are well thought and written. People spend days together to write the module. So they refer to the complete documentation instead of if you don't want to read this complete documentation, it's okay, no problem. You can in fact get started from the Trailhead just by opening any of these Trailhead modules, starting from the basic module to the advanced module. You can start working on these things. And if I'm not wrong, Anand has already shared you on how to setting up the basic tools. So I'd like to know, if you're already, how many of you have, please let me know if you have already set up the tools or not before I go forward. In chat window, yes, mine's done, sir, good. Install SFDX and VS Code. Awesome, no worries. Okay, it's opening my org, but not Trailhead org. We are going to resolve all of these things. Will install, it's installed. Cool. Okay, even if you have not installed, these are the two modules I would say. The Lightning, build Lightning Web Components. One is Quick Start Lightning Web Components, which we'll do after the break. We'll create that. Even if you have not installed, this is where you're going to definitely install it. And if you're already installed, you're going to do this particular module in 10 minutes, I would say. But these are the different modules. Quick Start, this module I already shared. Probably you have done your Lightning Web Component Developer Tools. And where if you have done your very first chapter, you would have installed the basic tools that are required to build the Lightning Web Components. Okay, there are other modules we'll see as you go forward. But Trailhead is one of the important places which you'll have to bookmark. And the third thing I want you to bookmark is, again, if I say Lightning Web Components, I was talking about the base components, right? So again, let me go to the developer guide itself. Here, if you see at the top level, you have something called as component reference, okay? And there are some other tools. These four are tools, okay? which are related to the security, Lightning Web Security and Locker Service and all. You need not really bother about these things at this moment, at least. But as you go forward, you are going to learn about those things. What are really interested and what are really important here is, one is this developer guide, the other one is component reference. We are going to use this component reference where you can see all the base Lightning components. Now you can count all of these components, see how many base components are currently available. Okay, I did not really get time to count these things, but definitely they should be near 100. So you can use these components which are readily available while building your applications. That's all for now. So let's get started and build our very first application, Lightning Web Components application. For that, let me get into the tools. Okay, I'm working on Mac, so I have the terminal. Don't worry, you can launch your code from anywhere, wherever you want. Let me launch my Visual Studio Code here. If you are using Mac or Unix, you can use the shortcut command code to launch your code. But otherwise, you can, if you are using Windows, whatever mechanism, you launch your code. Better, I would suggest, like, no, if you can launch your code and follow along with me, it will be great. But even otherwise, when we do the real workshop hands-on, if you have any questions, I'll be there to help you out. Okay, so let me launch the Visual Studio Code. This is the Visual Studio Code environment. When you launch the Visual Studio Code for the very first time, this is probably what you see. Okay, you have a get started screen. You can close it, but at the same time, I encourage you to see, like, these are the different things which are like shortcuts. It shows like different shortcuts, or how to get started working on a new file, blah 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 blah. All of these things. There are some walkthroughs. Okay, how to get started with Visual Studio Code. If no one is teaching you how to get started with VS Code, just go here and you'll find some really nice video tutorials which you can follow. Okay, for now, let me close it. Let's get acquainted to this environment first. On the left side, you can see something called as the activity bar. Okay, this is the activity bar, and this is your actual working environment, code environment, where you're going to write your programs and all. Okay, and there is also a menu at the top level from where you can launch few of the things. I said Visual Studio Code has an integrated terminal, so you can launch the terminal here. So if you notice, when I started this, I launched the terminal separately. Now I need not have a separate tool for my CLI. So within Visual Studio Code itself, I can use the terminal. So here I can run the CLI commands. So if, like, say ls, okay, it's a Unix command. If you are using Windows, probably you can even type dir kind of commands there. Okay, so it gets the, in fact, your PowerShell can be a part of your integral Visual Studio Code. So this is shell where you are going to type your commands. So you have a terminal here at the bottom, and on the left side, you have the activity bar. So let's see the activity bar very quickly. So you have the project explorer. So currently I did not open any project or did not create any project. So I don't have any project listed here. One important thing I want to show you first is extensions. So once you launch the Visual Studio Code, you have these extensions here. So here we have extensions for various things. Maybe you're working on HTML, maybe you're working on JavaScript, Java, C, C++, Python, or Salesforce. Whatever, Visual Studio Code is a IDE, integrated development environment for you, where you can launch those things and then you can start using those things. For us, Salesforce developers, we can search for Salesforce. Yeah. So I was talking about the Salesforce extension pack. Normally, you have extensions for working with Apex. You have extension for working with Visualforce, extension for working with Lightning Web Components and all. You need not install each extension separately. Rather, if you take the Salesforce extension pack, it's a collection of extensions. You have an extension for Apex, Apex Replay Debugger, Aura Components, and whatnot. A lot of Salesforce extensions. Okay, so whatever you are going to work with, so you have the extension for you available in the extension pack. So just install one extension, Salesforce extension pack, and that's it. You are good to go. And the good part is the team at Salesforce who are working on Salesforce extension pack as well as Salesforce CLI, they have a weekly release cadence. Okay, every week they release the new features that will be available for you. You can see the release notes, and if you update, probably you get some new tools which will be very easy or which will be useful for you to while you build your applications. Okay, so it's so dynamic, but don't worry, and you need not really keep on updating it every week. But yeah, once in a while you update it, you're going to get some really new features there. Okay, this is all about the extensions, and now let's get started and see how we can start working on the um, Lightning Web Components. If you have already done any of your uh, tutorials, like if you have set up your developer tools here, so you would have set up the CLI. So I've done the CLI. So here we have the CLI setup guide, just a simple set of commands you run. Your CLI will be installed and your Visual Studio Code will be installed. Once you are done that, you need to activate one of your orgs as a developer hub org. Okay, so how do you do that? Is you can launch the command palette. So basically, there are different ways of applying the commands in Visual Studio Code. One is you can use the CLI here, but there is a shorter way as well. If you go here, if you go to View menu and Command Palette, here you can run some commands. Okay, so here you can authorize an org, you can create a project, you can authorize an org, and so on and so forth. Now, in order to work, let's first start by creating a project. So if you see here, if you type SFDX, so these are the commands that are available for you to get started. So these are the basic commands. If you see here, you don't see too many commands at this point of time because these commands are context sensitive. Okay, so you can use SFDX. If you see at this point of time, I can only create project. I don't have any files to work on. So that I don't have create Apex class. I don't have create Lightning Web Component and all. I don't see any of these commands listed here when I type. Okay, so now let's take create project for now. So when I say SFDX create project, it is going to take us through a wizard where we can select various options. Either we can create an empty project, or we can create an analytics project, or a standard project. When I say standard project, it's going to create a Salesforce DX project, SFDX project. So which is a specific file structure. We'll see what is the file structure once the project is created. So for now, let's select standard project template. Let's give project name, like say Chennai LWC. Let me call it as Chennai LWC for now. Okay, I have entered a project name. Okay, where to save the project? For now, let's save it on the desktop. Let's create a project. Again, while answering the questions, I realized that there are many people who doesn't know what is Salesforce DX and many of the fundamentals. That's the reason I'm going a little slow. But if you feel like if I'm going really slow, I can probably change my orientation. Maybe I can increase the speed of doing the things and all. Okay, so for now, let's get started. So here we have created a project. I saved it on my desktop. If I go back to desktop, so here I have that project created. The project folder is created there, and that project folder is opened here automatically. And if I go to the terminal here, okay, in this terminal also, I'll be at that particular project folder location. It's loading a little slow. If you see, I'm at Chennai LWC. I can in fact click this button and expand this terminal, and you can check with a command called present working directory. This is how I type the commands here. Okay, so I'm at a user secret desktop Chennai LWC. So it has created a folder here. Let's see this folder structure. It has some files with starting with dot. These are configuration files. So in this SFDX project structure, we can set up some configurations here, but you really need not worry about these configurations at this point of time. Then we have one config folder where we have project scratch definition.json. So someone asked, what is Salesforce DX, right? I said Salesforce DX is a set of developer tools. Normally, how do you develop your applications on Salesforce platform so far? So you would have used the developer edition, which is almost equivalent to your production edition, but with limited set of resources. You're directly developing there. But in real time, you'll be using the sandboxes where you'll be developing your applications. And these sandboxes can also be shared across developers sometimes, in which case there's a probability of accidentally deleting the code. That's what I said. So Salesforce DX has given a new type of development environment where you can create something called as scratch orgs. Scratch orgs are like temporary orgs. So every feature you develop, maybe you are working on a feature for say 3 days. So you create a scratch org and work on those features for 3 days on that scratch org, and then delete the scratch org. Done. Okay, you need not really worry about any of those things. So your code will anyways will be saved in your GitHub repository or some kind of repository there, and you can also deploy it into your testing or production orgs. So here we are going to work on some temporary orgs called scratch orgs. We are going to do it in a short while. Don't worry. The second thing is you have the force app directory where you have one folder for each of these things. Maybe you want to work on a Salesforce application, you have an applications folder, then you have a Aura folder if you want to work on Aura. If you want to work on Apex, you have a classes folder. Similarly, if you want to work on Lighting Web Components, you have a LWC folder, Lighting Web Components folder. And good part is, if you see here, you have some ESLint things. So what happened here is, it has also created some configuration files for linting. I'll tell you what is linting. So when you write your code, if you do some syntax errors, it is going to alert you that you have made a syntax error there, right? So that process of alerting is called as linting. There is a tool called linting tool, which you use with the JavaScript. So when you use the Salesforce DX project here on Visual Studio Code with Salesforce extension, when you create the project, out of the box, you'll get both linting tool as well as the prettier tool, which is going to prettify your code, which is going to beautify your code. If you make like indentation, if you do not do indentation properly, it is going to do it for you. Okay. Similarly, there is folder for everything, permission sets and all, so on and so forth. Okay. Now let's create our very first component and see how it works. Okay. Before that, what I said is you want to set up one of the orgs as your dev hub org. I'll tell you what. Okay. Let me see if I have a. Okay. Okay. Fine. Let me tell you. In Salesforce DX, some terms are really important. One is. Let me open a new file here. Okay. Salesforce DX. Okay, when I say Salesforce DX, I said it's a developer experience. Salesforce developer experience is a collection of developer tools. So one of the important things there is scratch org. Scratch org, as I said, is your development environment. It's your DE, development environment. Okay, and it is a temporary environment. So it lasts from 7 days to 30 days. That's all. Okay, so even 1 day to 30 days, 1 day to 30 days, while 7 days is default. And the other thing is we need to have one Salesforce org. We need to have a Salesforce org, which we call it as a dev hub org. So how you make an org as dev hub? It will be just a button, a checkbox. Once you check it, it is going to be a dev hub org. What this org do is it will manage your scratch orgs. It will manage your scratch orgs. It will keep track of how many scratch orgs you have created and which is active, which is inactive and all. Okay. So as I said, you can create as many scratch orgs as you want. It again depends upon the license that you have. For developer, to get started, you can create a maximum of 3 scratch orgs with the developer edition. But if you have like enterprise edition or unlimited edition, you can create many scratch orgs. Okay. So these two terms are really important. So first thing is, in order to get started with the development, you'll have to authorize. This step you would have already done. Okay. Authorize a dev hub org. Okay. So you need to authorize a dev hub org. You need to mark one of your Salesforce org as a dev hub org so that you can create the scratch orgs. Then create a scratch org. And then finally set one of the scratch orgs as a default scratch org. Okay, so that whenever you commit, it goes to the scratch org. Don't worry. Let's see the steps. How do you authorize a scratch org? You can go to command palette again. So you can go to view, command palette. Okay, then if you say or, I did not type the complete command. I just typed a little bit of command, and it shows various options. Now you can see a lot of SFDX options here. So it says authorize the dev hub. When you say authorize the dev hub, when you click this, it is going to take you to a location where you will give the credentials, okay, and log in. Once you log in, then you are going to enable the dev hub there. So I've already done that. So what I'll do is I'll open the dev hub directly. So how do I know whether I have authorized the dev hub or not? So if you go to the command line, one important command I want you to remember is SFDX force or list. Okay. Again, what is SFDX? Don't worry. SFDX is if you don't know any of these commands, simply type SFDX. It is going to show you the possibilities. Okay. Different types of commands that you can run. So SFDX stands for Salesforce Developer Experience. All Salesforce Developer Experience tools are provided in the form of commands here. Okay. So we are using those commands here. So force, if you see, force have tools for Salesforce Developer. So that's why I'm using SFDX force. In that force, I'm running some command related to org. In that, I want to list the orgs. So I'm running this command. When I run this command, it's going to show me the list of orgs that are connected. So I have one org called dev@salesforce.com. This is my username with some password. It doesn't show the password here. It is encrypted altogether. And I've given an alias also here so that I can easily identify my org called dev. Let's open that org. Okay, let's open that org. So how do I open that org? I can say SFDX force. Again, I'll be using the force command or command. This time I'll say open. And if you want to see what are the different options that are available, in fact, I can say -u and I want to open say dev hub. But how do I know I need to use -u here? Okay, so for that you can use -h, which stands for help. If you don't know any command, no worries. Just type the command and say -h and enter. It shows you the complete description. Okay, it tells you what is this command and it gives a description of what does it do. And it also shows you some examples here, how to use that command. Okay, you see -u is the username. If you want to open a specific org, I can open that. So here, I'll open force org open. Let me say force org list first to see the list of orgs. So you can see the list of orgs here. I want to open this particular org. So I'll say SFDX force org open -u and I'll use this dev hub. So if you don't understand this at this point of time, don't worry. The only thing is I just wanted to show how you enable the dev hub. When you use this command here from here, authorize the dev hub and go there, what you're going to do once you get into that org, that I'm going to show you here. Okay, let me open this once. So it's going to open that org in my browser. And if you see, this org is no way different from your general developer edition org. In fact, it is the developer edition org itself. Okay, so here you can say dev hub, right? When you search for dev hub, you can see an option here, and you can enable that. I have already enabled the dev hub, so it is showing, it is grayed out, and it's showing me that it has enabled. Once you enable the dev hub, you cannot disable it. So make sure that one of the orgs, you keep it as the dev hub org. In general, your production environment org will be a dev hub org where we are going to keep track of your scratch orgs. So how do you keep track of scratch orgs? You can go to the app launcher and simply say scratch. Okay, and you can see scratch org information and active scratch orgs. So from here you can see the scratch orgs, different scratch orgs and all. Currently I have one scratch org here in my dev hub, okay, which was created on say 22nd March, which will be expiring on 29th March. I have to some default scratch org. Okay, now let's go back and start working on our LWC project. I'll close it off. Okay, no confusions. Let me also minimize this, minimize my terminal. I can do that. And let me close this for now. Don't save. Okay, I have a project. Now I have LWC folder where I can create the lighting web components. But before that, I also want to create a scratch out so that once I create a component, how do I test it? I can test it on the scratch out. As I said, scratch out is a temporary org. So for that, what I can do is I can again launch my command palette. As I said earlier, I can use view command palette, or shorter version would be command shift P. And here I can simply say create. Okay. Create a scratch out. So there is an option called create a default scratch out. Okay. So you can, as I said, you can create as many scratch outs as you want. 3 of the scratch outs can be active at a time for the developer edition. One of the scratch out can be default, which means that whenever you make the code changes and even if you don't see and just push it, it's going to get into this scratch out, default scratch out. So let's create a default scratch out for now. Let's create a default scratch out and let's call it as again, it launched a wizard here. It asks us like a way to store which scratch out definition you want to use. If you go here in config, you have project scratch out definition file. Okay, this is the default scratch out. Now, when you create the scratch out, you have various options while creating the scratch out itself. Maybe you want to have some sample data. Maybe you don't want to have the sample data. You can set a lot of configurations here. So you are going to learn a lot about this as you go forward. For now, let's take everything default. So let's simply create a scratch out here. So I go to scratch out, say create default scratch out, and ask me like definition file. Select the default one. Give some name for your scratch out. So what shall we name? So let us say LWC training. I'll simply say LWC training as a scratch out, default scratch out for now. This is going to be the alias. I press enter. Now it asks like enter a number from 1 to 30 days. As I said, scratch out can live from 1 day to a maximum of 30 days. So and default is 7. If I don't give anything, it takes 7 days as the default, and it creates a scratch out for 7 days, after which it will expire. So let me give say 30 days and say enter. Now at the bottom you can see, probably it is, you can see a notification. It says like it's creating a default scratch out. Okay, once it has done successfully, you can go and say SFDX force org list. You'll be able to see your scratch out. Okay, it has successfully ran. Now let's go ahead and see. Okay, I'll say SFDX force org list. Okay. You can see that I have some orgs here already. Okay. One of these orgs I've set as a dev hub org, which by using the command, as I said, authorize the dev hub org. If you see command shift P, okay. If you see auth, with this command, I've set this dev hub org. Fine. Then I have created a scratch out. At the bottom, you can see 3 orgs, right? So these are the scratch outs, different scratch outs. So I've set a scratch out, and there is a symbol here. Whenever you see a symbol here, D, which means that this is the dev hub org. I've given the name as dev hub. Not necessary that you give the name as dev hub. It can be like dev hub 2021 or right. Apex demo. Any of these orgs can be dev hub orgs. The only thing is you'll have to enable dev hub there. And at the bottom, you can see these are the different scratch outs. I can work on any of these scratch outs, but one of the scratch outs is marked as U here, which essentially means that this particular scratch out is your default scratch out. So if I don't mention the scratch out name and I push the code directly, then it's going to get into the scratch out. How to push the code, how to see, we'll see it in a short while. Okay. Let me quickly see if I have any urgent questions here. How to extend scratch arcs? Don't want to expire. You cannot do that. Scratch arcs are basically um, temporary arcs. Okay, you will not be on Salesforce platform. At least you will not be working on a single small feature for so many days. Even if you are working, you can create a scratch arc every day. Check out the code and start working. Yes. So you lose all your work. You will never lose all your work. Okay, you are going to save your work in a GitHub repository. Okay, so that your work will not be lost. So you're not going to lose your work. So it's like a temporary arc. It's like a playground. You go to playground, play football, and come back. Okay, it's something like that. Or you go to office, or you go to a manufacturing industry, manufacture something for a while, put it there, and come back. That's it. Okay, that's like a scratch arc. So you have to save before it expires. Perfect, correct. So make sure that you save your code before it expires. And yeah, sorry, someone asked me to increase the font. I did not see. If there is something like urgent question, you can probably unmute or ask so that Anand can let me know and I can increase the font and stuff. Because I just wanted to show it in notes. I have written there. Otherwise, no problem. Please provide link what Salesforce extension package to be installed. Its name itself is Salesforce extension package. So you go to this window here and type Salesforce extensions here. You'll find the package. Just select that particular package. Let me say Salesforce. Let me say Salesforce. You can see Salesforce extension pack. Select the package, and you can see this button. Here you'll see install button because I already installed. You're seeing an update button here. Screen is not fully visible at the bottom. Sorry for that. That's the reason I am just bringing this terminal, increasing the terminal and clearing the screen and doing that. So wherever possible, wherever I'm typing, I'll not type at the bottom. I'll make sure that I'll do it at the screen top. Can we connect two different orgs like Sandbox production to same VS Code? Of course we can connect. Of course we can connect. So if you see my SFDX org list, you can see so many orgs connected at the moment. Okay, so I can commit to any of this. I can commit my code to any of these orgs. I can push my code to any of these orgs. So you can do that. Okay, so that's how we can deploy. Okay, can you spell the tool name? I was actually talking about Linter, 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 and the other one is Prettier. These are the two tools which comes by default, and I'll show you how to those two tools as well in Salesforce DX project. Okay, perfect pace. That's good to hear. So let's go ahead. Now what we have done, we have just enabled the Dev Hub and we have created Scratch Arc, nothing more, and we have created a Salesforce project. Now let's create a Lightning web component. Let's close this. Now let's create our very first Lightning web component. How do I create? Again, I can launch the command palette. Instead of every time going to view and say command palette, I can use the shortcut keys. If you're using Windows, you can use Control-Shift-P. If you're using Mac, you can use Command-Shift-P. Okay, so it automatically launches the command palette. Here, I can say, I want to create LWC, okay? I can simply type create, and it shows all the SFDX commands which I have created, in which I want to create a Lightning web component. So I can select this command, or I can continue typing I can say create Lightning. So it filters out and it shows the relevant commands. So once I see the relevant command, I can simply say create Lightning web component. Okay, so let's call which as say first component. And here, one important naming convention, you can name whatever you want. As I have given first component, I could have named Satyasekar, whatever component. Or if I'm using some office use case, I want to create a login form. I would have said login form component. Simply, I would have said login form component. Okay, login form. Okay, whatever name you want to give for your component, you can give. For now, let's call it as the first component. Okay, and if you notice, I have used a camel case here. Okay, so it starts with small case letter, and the second word starts with a capital case letter, right? So if you are using multiple words start with a small case letter, and all other words, use separate words using a capital case. This is a good naming convention. Never, and in the name you cannot use hyphen. You cannot start your name with numbers and all. If you have any doubts about how to name your Lightning Web Components, the better place is, as I said, keep this document ready, creating Lightning Web Components, and go to define a component. You can see the naming conventions. Component folder, you can go somewhere, component folder. It shows like different naming conventions. So what are allowed? So here you can see, must begin with a lowercase letter, must contain only alphanumeric and all. Okay. So if you can search like naming of the component or something like that, it's going to filter out and you can see the results here. So this is how you can refer to your developer documentation. So if you have a doubt, go back and refer like, what are the different naming conventions. Okay. So here again, let me launch, create Lightning Web Component. Let's call it as first component, and press enter. And where to store the component again. So we are using the Salesforce DX project structure. Okay, this is the project structure for the Salesforce DX where I showed there are different folders, dedicated folders for each of your metadata, right? For creating your classes, for creating your aura, for creating Lightning Web Components. So it gives you a default folder for LWC. Obviously, this is the folder we are going to use. You are not going to create anywhere else. But if you want to create elsewhere also, you can select a different custom directory. But let's choose the default one. And you can see here it has created a component for me. I did not create a HTML file separately, JavaScript file separately, meta file separately. So if you go here and you can see that it has created a HTML file, it has created a JavaScript file, it has created a meta file. So these are the three files. It is assuming that I am going to create a user interface as well. So it has created a HTML and JavaScript file for me. If I want to implement my own styling, I can use CSS, but it's not necessary. As I said earlier, only these three files are required for me. This file, meta file, to tell something to the Salesforce on how to deal with this component, right? And this component JavaScript file to write some kind of logic implementation. And this HTML file, a basic HTML file. So we are creating our very first component. So what we'll do is, we'll create a simple component. Let's say hello Chennai. Hello Chennai, and let us save it. That's all. So if you see, it's like a normal HTML. The only thing you would have noticed it, I have not written anything like HTML head, body, and all. I have not written those things. Those are not required. It's going to be handled by the LWC framework. It's going to take care of it. You need not really worry about it. So what you're using here is template. So probably when you learned HTML, I don't know whether you have learned about template or not. If not, don't worry. Template is a standard tag, again, standard HTML tag in HTML5. And this tag is used to create a custom component, a custom element. Just like your HTML head body elements, you are creating your own custom element. Now I want to create my own custom element called first component. And I want to use this custom element wherever I want. Okay. So for that, I'll have to embed all my HTML markup, whatever I'm going to write HTML code, that I'm going to put it between the template tags. So whatever LWC component you see, you're going to write your HTML code in the template tag itself. So HTML Chennai. That's all. For now, let's keep it very simple. Let's save it. Now, how do I see the output? How do I make it available at different places? So the thing is, I want to make it available in my Salesforce org. For that, I need to open my JS meta file. So I need to go to meta file here, and it gives the default structure. So how can I make it available? I can make it as true. I need to set is exposed in my meta file to true. Don't worry about this API version. This is the latest version which we are using. So is exposed to true. Cool. Then I also need to say where this component will be available, whether this component will be available in home page or app page or whichever page I want. Okay. So I can make it available in different pages. So for that, I can use targets. There is something called as targets. Okay. Targets tag. In this, you can have a target config. Okay, let me. I also have a shortcut here, so you can learn about shortcut little later. So these are the things I have written already. Again, how I've done, it's a magic for now. Don't worry. Sometime later, I'll tell you some productivity things with which you can do the things faster. But this is the basic code I need. So I need to set is exposed to true targets, and I have created target called Lightning app page. I could have also created like home page if I want to make it available home page, or I want to make it available for both the pages, say app page as well as home page. I can even do that. So I can create one more target here, and I want to make it as available even in the home page. It's up to us. Done. So whatever pages you want to use, you can make it available for those pages. Okay. So let's push it. Now it's ready. Let me know if my voice drops because my headphone set is almost charging out. I'll use the other headset for the rest of the session. But yeah, let's see it working first, and then we'll take a break and then continue with more details. So I create my component. Just use my first component.html, and here I've created hello Chennai. I haven't done anything about in my JS file. I'll tell you what is this JS file and how it works. The only change I made is I made it available for my Lightning app builder so that I can use it in my Salesforce org. Okay. Now I need to deploy it into this Scratch org, LWC training org, which I have already created. So how do I deploy it? So what I can do is I can use the command palette again, and I can use push command. Okay. Push source to default Scratch org. I know this is already a default Scratch org, so I can push this source code to this Scratch org. So just push this button. Is going to push your source code to your default Scratch org, right? Then what you can do is you can use a command from your command palette. Let me clear it. There are different ways of opening your default Scratch org. SFDX force or list. Let me say list. So these are the different orgs that are available. I want to open this Scratch org. I can say SFDX force org open command, and I can use -u option and give this LWC training as the org which I want to open. This is one way. I know this is definitely a hard way. For those who haven't worked on Salesforce CLI, would definitely be scared with it. So I'm not going to use it. The other option is I can use Command Shift P, and here I can say open. Okay. Or SFDX open default org. I can click this button. This is easier way to do. Okay. There is even easier way to do. At the bottom, you have a status bar. I don't know if it is visible or not, but at the bottom it has a status bar where it shows different things like just and the code line numbers, column numbers, just like your Notepad++ or Notepad stuff. Okay, there's also a shortcut to open the org. So you can click this button, open org, it's going to open. It's the same functionality, whether you use the command shift palette and say open. Let me repeat those 30 seconds. So now I want to open my Scratch org. We are going to take a break in, say, next 3 minutes. So don't worry, just concentrate. I want to show it running. And then after the break, we'll go into the details. Okay. So, so there are different ways of launching your org, your default Scratch org, whatever you're seeing here at the bottom. So one way is by using the command line interface. The other way is by using the command palette, where you can say SFDX, if I say open, so you can see SFDX open default arc. The third option is you can use the button here. So let's say SFDX open default arc. Okay, so I'm in my Salesforce Scratch Arc. This looks like your developer edition again. It's not your developer edition. It's a Scratch Arc. It's a temporary arc which I've created for 30 days. Okay, so and it has the same configurations just like that. So how do you get all the sales, service, marketing, all these configurations? That's because when I created the Scratch Arc, I used this Scratch Arc definition file where we have mentioned that it is going to have all of those things. Okay, and here you can see, like, no, I'm using a developer edition here. So it has created a developer edition Scratch Arc. Similarly, you can create an enterprise edition Scratch Arc, or you can create other edition Scratch Arcs as well. Okay, now that we have created a component, how to use the component? So let's use the component on one of the pages. So for now, let's open the sales app. Because you expose the component to be available for any of the app pages, you can use in any of these pages. Okay, if you want to, and we also expose it in home page, so you can also put your component here in the home page. You can see, if you see the home page, you have a number of components here. Okay, now let's quickly see. Let's use that in one of the, let's say in the home page itself. Let's edit this page. And here, when we say edit the page, it is going to open the Lightning App Builder for you. This is the place where you can configure your pages. If you see, it's the same page. If you go back, let me go back here. If you see home, you have quarterly performance component, assistant component, today's event, so on and so forth. If I say edit page, it is going to launch the tool automatically. You can also launch this tool from setup, but in this case, this is kind of shortcut. It is launching the tool automatically. And you can see the quarterly performance assistant, today's event is the same page, different component. If you don't want any of these components, you can remove those components. For instance, I want to remove, say, assistant component. I can remove it. That's gone. And here on the left side, you can see the standard components. So in my initial presentation, I said, there are some components that are provided out of the box. You can use all of these components like related list, path, and all. You can see so many standard components. And this is one of the custom components that we have created by ourselves. So let's drag this custom component and put it here, wherever you want. Okay, let us save it. Okay, it might ask you to activate. Simply activate it. And when you activate, you can make it as org default, or you can add it to a specific page in your apps. So let's keep it simple. Let's say send as org default and save it. Now you have activated your page so that you can see your custom components here. We are already saved. If you want, you can save it once again and go back. And you can see our component is showing up here. And it's not so good. It's not, its look and feel is not like your Lightning web components, like your Lightning experience look and feel. There are questions around SLDS, how do we use that and all. That we are going to see after the break. So now the time is 11:22. Anand, how long can we take a break?
We have 15 minutes break. So
yeah, we can have 15 minutes break. So in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, you can also post it in the your Zoom. I will answer those questions as well after the break. Now take a perfect break. I know this is required because you're listening for the past 1.5 hours, if I'm not wrong. So take a break. So now time is 11:25. Let's meet again back at 11:40.
Sir, one last question. That how can we open the test scratch org from the CLI or
How
the
can we?
command prompt?
Yeah, I'll show you that as well. So let me close the scratch out. Okay, I go back. Let me clear the screen so that it will be easily visible. Okay, now SFDX force. First, let's see what is our scratch org name. Okay, even if you don't remember scratch org name, even then you can open it. I'll show you both the options. So I want to open the scratch org, right? LWC training or any scratch org. Say Dev2. I can also open samples. So to open that, I can say SFDX force org open. This is a command. If you don't know anything about that command, you can use -H to see the help. Okay. So -H gives you help where, like, no, you see -U option is the target username, whichever you want to open. So let us clear. So always, whenever you don't know anything about that, so -H will help you. So in this, you'll be using -U option, okay, which tells which particular scratch org you want to use. So these are the alias. Either you can use the username directly, copy it and paste it here, or you can also use the alias. It's up to you, whichever you want to use. Okay. So alias is easy to use. So I'll take alias and put it here. That's it. Okay. And enter. It is going to open the scratch org. So I have used force org list. My bad. No worries. Let me open force org. Open. This is the command. Okay. Force org open -U LWC training. So this is the scratch org I want to open. So when I press enter, it is going to open the scratch org for me. Right? So this is the command you use to open scratch orgs. Any of the scratch orgs, not only scratch orgs. Even if you want to open the DevHub org, any of these orgs, any of the orgs listed here, you can use SFDX force org open -U command. But if you want to use the default org, you know that this is the default org. Instead of typing this long command every time, you can simply say SFDX force org open. That's it. Even if you don't give -U, it is going to open the default org for you. So that's the reason we have set one of the orgs as the default org. So whenever you're using commands like to push the code or get the code from here, if you're not using -U and the alias name there, it's going to run that operation on the default org.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. So you can take a break. If you have any questions, you can post the questions and we'll see how we can use SLDS and other things after the break. Let's start again. But before that, let me quickly spend 5 minutes time to answer some of the questions and then we continue from there. So let's give 5 minutes for that.